Hello, I'm standing outside Berlin's oldest university. This is Humboldt University, and a fun fact for you, Albert Einstein taught a class here very many years ago. Coming back to the present, there's been a lot of reporting about how the coronavirus pandemic has affected or impacted various aspects of modern day living. And I wondered how academic institutions, specifically universities in Africa, have been affected. And to get a picture of that, I've been talking to students, to professors, vice-chancellors, to get a sense of how their institutions are coping. So we will be hearing from all of them, but first we'll start off with two students who have been very honest to tell me how they've been spending their free time.
Hi, my name is Elsa Majimbo, Elsa Angel Majimbo, and I am a journalist at a university here in Nairobi called Strathmore University. I am also an Instagram comedian.
Ever since Corona started, we've all been in isolation, and I miss no one. Hakuna mtu nimemiss. Why am I missing you? There is no reason for me to miss you. Hakuna. And people keep on telling me you haven't participated in Corona challenges, you haven't joined house party, you haven't joined TikTok. It's not by mistake. It's not. It's not.
As much as Corona has been a curse to most of the world, for me it's had its positives. It's kind of been of a blessing. It's because of that it helped me gain more traction on the internet. So this is my room, definitely where I spend most of my time. This is where I make my YouTube videos from, like that space over there. On my bed is where I make most of my Instagram videos. So I just sit and chill. Sometimes I use the pillows as props or something like that. Yeah, so this is just kind of like my space where I spend my time, where my vibe is.
Now, since every day is a holiday, I spend most of my time at home, so I get time to hang out with family. We piss each other off, we make up, we have a lot of fun together. So I'm using most of the time away from campus to work on Campus Confessions, an animated digital series and podcast that I produce that's on my website, sawasawa.tv. It features real stories of campus life from Uganda, told by the students themselves. This is Makerere University, the most prominent university in Uganda, located in the capital city, Kampala. It has a student population of about 40,000 students. Now, on the 20th of March, due to the spread of the coronavirus, the university was shut down, and all the students advised to go home and stay home and wait for further communication. But as you can see, the university is empty. No sign of any students, no student activity, no lectures, examinations, everything has been put on a hold due to the coronavirus.
Now, most, if not all, university campuses have been forced to close because of lockdown measures. And so what universities have done is to migrate to the online space, that is, having classes online. But in South Africa, some students are opposed to that. They say that it will disadvantage students who come from poor background, who may not have the resources to access online learning. Now you're going to hear from Adam Habib. He is Vice-Chancellor of WITS University in Johannesburg, about why he decided to go ahead with moving classes online despite an appeal from some students not to do so.
We have a different interpretation of social justice, one that is more developmentally oriented. And this definition of social justice says that we must be conscious of the inequalities in our midst, and we must mitigate those consequences. In that regard, the university went out and set up a computer loan bank. Effectively, we bought 5,000 devices, and we will be sending them to students who do not have a device. This is an example of mitigating the consequences of inequality. In addition to that, we've negotiated an arrangement to provide each and every student with 30 gigabytes of data, 10 gigabytes at any time and 20 gigabytes for the evenings. We've been dealt a bad card. The pandemic is not something that any of us anticipated. But let's rise to the challenge to overcome the challenges that this pandemic has put in our path, and make sure that this pandemic is not allowed to stop our learning process.
Okay, so WITS has been running online classes since the 20th of April. One student, Thobeka, who's a beneficiary of the computer loan scheme, sent over this report about how she's finding the learning online experience.
Online learning has been far less complicated than I had imagined because our lecturers send us notes and then lecture videos, which makes it easier for us to understand, even better compared to in class because we can access the videos more than once and ensure that we understand.
The University of Cape Town has also gone online and made similar provisions for underprivileged students. But the Vice-Chancellor there, Professor Mamokgethi Phakeng, made a point about how having access to hardware and software, that would be a computer device and internet, doesn't go all the way.
Conditions for learning are not the same for students. If you come from a poor family in a one room or 2 rooms with 8 people, it's difficult to study. It's not easy to get a space to focus on your studies. Even when you come not from a poor family, the situation at your home at the moment, like a student who says, my parents are currently going through a divorce, it's lockdown, they're at each other's throat, you really can't work. So it's not because I have free Wi-Fi, but it doesn't help me because it's a toxic environment. So residences play a very significant role for students at varsity. It's not just to bring students closer to the classroom, but it's to bring students outside of an environment that's not so conducive. And that has come to the fore very strongly.
Professor Phakeng also pointed out that it's not just a toxic environment that would be disruptive to the learning process. It could also be things like you're at home, so you're expected to help around with chores or help your parents fill out forms, right? So things like this as well. But to move on, just how effective will online learning be? Prof, you're a mathematician, and I almost want to argue numbers are your first love, so to say. I mean, just from that perspective, that background of yours, just how are you approaching this as you lead this massive institution through this pandemic? I just want to get a sense of what goes in your mind as you get up in the morning and as you chart the way forward for your institution, bearing in mind your mathematical background and just the energy that you bring to this job.
I'm surprised at the premium that you put on the mathematical background, Christine. Numbers can be deceiving. Okay, numbers can be deceiving. I look at the data analytics, the instruments, the data that colleagues are using. When I ask them, how is online learning going on? And the DVC teaching and learning gives me the figures, and he gives me the percentage of students that have, the number of students that have logged in. The numbers are important, but they don't tell us everything. Because even if they tell you how many students logged on to our university portal, it doesn't tell me what they did. It may just be logging in. So I see that I'm not so moved, despite my mathematical background. The numbers don't move me. I'm interested in the qualitative data. So I'm waiting to see what the academics will produce in terms of assignment submissions, quality of assignments.
So that's the academic or the learning aspect. But what about financial implications? How will universities be impacted from a financial perspective? In fact, one student was suggesting that students should be given a fee discount this year. Of course, that would directly impact financial targets of these institutions. We have to remember that universities have to make profits as well.
We've had to make many decisions. It's not just going online, but we've also advised students that if you feel that you can't carry the modules that you registered for the beginning of the year, you can drop some modules. Dropping some modules, of course, means that they get a refund for that module. So here we are exposing ourselves to millions of financial losses.
So that is an example of a financial implication that may or may not be specific, but the impact really goes beyond finances. Take graduations, for example. Most, if not all of these, are probably going to be postponed. Research grants will possibly be halted. But it's not all doom and gloom. Professor Ernst of the Alliance of Research Universities in Africa explains.
The universities have been quite crucial. They've been very much central to the fight against the pandemic in Africa. When governments began to set up response teams in Africa to advise on how to respond to the pandemic, most of these response teams relied extensively on researchers from universities. Many of these universities have also been more or less the main centers for testing for coronavirus in their countries. So apart from supporting students, apart from supporting faculty, they are supporting governments.
Uganda's Makerere University is a good example. I asked the Vice-Chancellor there, Professor Barnabus Nawangwe, to tell us how they are helping the government tackle the coronavirus pandemic.
The first innovation is the low-cost ventilator. As you are aware, ventilators are expensive on the world market, $25,000 to $60,000 per piece. In Uganda, we have only 55 for the whole country. Now that is not sustainable. So our researchers have come up with a low-cost ventilator, which will cost less than $5,000. The second innovation is the rapid testing kit. The rapid testing kit will reduce the cost of testing for coronavirus from $65 to just $1 per test. And the beautiful thing about this test is that we will be able to test in any rural part of the country because it is in situ. And it also takes only 10 to 15 minutes to get the results. The final innovation that I want to talk about is the EpiTent. The EpiTent is a tent that we developed during the height of Ebola in West Africa. The EpiTent is designed in such a way to be comfortable in our tropical conditions, controlling humidity and temperature. But it is also easy to clean. The EpiTent can accommodate up to 50 patients at a go, and it can also be used as a mobile hospital.
And there are a lot more examples all over the continent, in Kenya, in Ethiopia, in Nigeria, like at the University of Ibadan, where they're developing alcohol-based hand sanitizers. But to move on, I've been wondering, like so many others, if and when things will return to normal. I put that question to UCT's Professor Phakeng.
If we think we're going to have the same world that we had before Corona, after Corona, that's a dream. So I'm not even talking about UCT. I think the world is going to be different, and therefore UCT will be different. I've been talking at UCT about an uncertain future and the need for us to produce the kinds of graduates who can cope in a rapidly changing world where the future is not certain. Can you imagine, Christine, that in November 2019, I stood up with a whole senior team of and I said, we have to disrupt ourselves. And I said to them, if we do not disrupt ourselves, we will not be relevant for the future. So I think for us as UCT, we will not, after Corona, we will not necessarily be the same UCT as before Corona, but my view is that we will be a better UCT.
And that's where we'll leave it for the moment. When the pandemic is over, I will be sure to follow up with universities to get a sense of just how they emerged from coronavirus. But for now, it's bye-bye from Berlin.